Hedge funds like Citadel, Millennium, Balyasny are always all over the news. How do they work? What is so special about them? And why are they so successful? You're about to find out. According to Bloomberg, a $1 million investment in Millennium in 1989 is worth about $67 million today. And a $1 million investment in Citadel in 1990 is worth about $236 million today. This would imply around 18% average annual return. Compare this to the S&P 500. If you invested 1 million in the S&P 500 in 1990, it would be worth about 19 million today, almost 13 times less than if you invested in Citadel. LPs or limited partners, the people who give money to hedge funds to manage, like pension funds, endowments, family offices, have been pouring money into hedge funds like Citadel and Millennium in recent years, away from other types of hedge funds. Watch until the end to find out why that's been the case and what makes these hedge funds so successful. Hedge funds like Citadel, Millennium, Balyasny are multi-manager, multi-strategy hedge funds. What does that even mean? Let's take each term at a time. Firstly, multi-manager. Multi-manager means that there are many different teams within the hedge fund that manage money. In other words, the hedge fund is split up into many different teams. Each team is generally comprised of a portfolio manager and a number of analysts. Usually, there is at least one analyst and up to 5, 6, or 7 analysts, although the exact number of analysts can vary significantly from one team to another. Each team is allocated capital to manage. For example, if the hedge fund's total assets under management, or AUM, are 10 billion, one team might be allocated 800 million to manage. A second team might be allocated 500 million to manage. Bigger teams can be allocated multiple billions to manage, and then smaller teams can be allocated 100 million, and so on. You get the idea. Each team is called a pod, which is actually where the term pod shop comes from. Hedge funds like Citadel, Millennium, Balyasny are known as pod shops, which is precisely because they're divided into many different teams or pods that manage capital. Within each pod or a team, the portfolio manager is the most senior person who makes the final investment decisions, and the analysts are there to help him with the research process. At some firms, the analyst can be solely responsible for managing a part of the portfolio. This is usually known as a sleeve, a carve, or a sub-book of the broader portfolio. For example, at a pod consisting of a portfolio manager and 6 analysts managing 1 billion, there might be a more senior analyst who manages 200 million of that capital with limited help from the portfolio manager. The pods or the teams operate independently from each other, which is true, but with some caveats. One, depending on the firm, there might be some level of collaboration between teams. For example, a portfolio manager covering consumer stocks might exchange some ideas with another portfolio manager or other analysts from other teams. Secondly, while each team led by the portfolio manager is fully responsible for the investment decisions they make, there is still some oversight and control by the senior leadership of the firm. In other words, pods or teams still operate under some restrictions, especially as it relates to how much risk they can take on. And we'll talk more about that in a separate video. Okay, so to summarize, multi-manager means that the hedge fund is divided into many different teams called pods, each made up of a portfolio manager and analysts that are allocated some capital to manage. Now, let's tackle the second part, multi-strategy. This is quite self-explanatory. Multi-strategy means that there are different strategies that the teams or the pods we just talked about employ. You might be wondering, what does a strategy even mean? And you should think about it through the following question. How do I go about making money in the markets? An example of one strategy, which is the bread and butter for some multi-manager, multi-strategy hedge funds, is fundamental long-short equity. You look at companies' financial statements, evaluate management quality, analyze industry trends to ultimately decide whether you want to go long or short a stock. While some teams might focus on fundamental long-short equity, there are many other teams who focus on commodities trading, global macro, fixed income, systematic strategies, and so on. But this is exactly where the term multi-strategy comes from. Okay, so now we know that hedge funds like Citadel, Millennium, Balyasny are multi-manager, multi-strategy hedge funds. They're divided into many different teams called pods, and each team can use a different strategy to make money in the markets. So what is so special about them, and why are limited partners like pension funds, endowments so keen on investing money in them? From the definitions we just went through, you can see how diversified these funds are across a large number of teams and a wide variety of strategies. Intuitively, this just spreads out the risk, and the fund's total performance is not solely reliant or overly dependent upon the performance of any single team or any single strategy. You may never see these hedge funds post wild 30, 40, 50% yearly gains. You barely ever see them lose money, if at all, even during periods of market downturns. Their returns are extremely consistent and stable over time. That's because they're really good at generating risk adjusted returns. And the way you should think about risk adjusted returns is how much reward am I gaining for the amount of risk I'm taking? A portfolio manager that takes on excessive risk to generate really high returns might seem very impressive to you on the surface, but in reality, this is not sustainable. And over a period of time, those returns will deteriorate, especially during periods of market volatility and downturns. So multi-manager, multi-strategy hedge funds value stringent risk management powered by great technological infrastructure, which is, by the way, really hard to replicate, especially given the size and scale they've reached. This is why you see many emerging multi-managers not being successful in challenging the top multi-manager firms in recent years. Consistent moderate returns due to really good risk management are a lot less likely to expose you to significant losses. And this is valued more than ever now in the current market environment, given all the macroeconomic conditions, the geopolitical issues, and really periods of very high volatility. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to learn about next.